Give yourselves a round of applause for being with us on this beautiful, it's a stunning day, eh? It's officially fall, which means birth. I'm going to just reverse everything.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Mike Payette. I'm the artistic director here. This is the beginning of our 23-24 season, and we're really, really fortunate to have an exceptional story awaiting for you, The Last Epistle of Tightrope Time, by Walter Borden and directed by Peter Hinton-Davis and designed by Andy Moro. Please, yes. I'm going to give you a little bit, if you don't know already, I'm going to give you a little bit of the Coles notes of who these fine people are. We have, of course, Peter Hinton-Davis, who was last with us as director of the Who's Behind the Belong to the Deer last season. He's also directed the Millennial Malcontent and Frida K. Do you remember when Frida K was?
96.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go.
It was terrific.
And it was terrific. It's still imprinted in your mind? That's
Wow,
great.
wow.
That's great. Other credits, of course, working at Shaw's, Stratford, Centaur Theatre in Montreal, all over the country. He's been a member of the Order of Canada since 2009 and was the previous artistic director of the National Arts Centre English Theatre. So we're very, very fortunate to have this fascinating artist, and we're going to talk a little bit more. And beside him is the incredible Andy Moro, who is among other things, the artistic co-director of Article 11 with Tara Began, who's
right there.
Right there! Who also directed The Herd 2 seasons ago. Their work upholds the 11th article of the UN's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And other credits include, with Article 11, Rise Red River, which was a show also with the Prairie Theatre Exchange,
Yes.
as well as Ministry of Grace, Reckoning, Room, Declaration, Dear Woman, again with Article 11, Little Women, Honor Beat with Theatre Calgary, Third Color, Space Girl, War Being Waged at Prairie Theatre Exchange, and a host of others.
Tons of stuff.
Tons. Just check out the bio. Just check out the program, basically. Again, let's welcome our esteemed guests. So it's just gonna be a chat. We're gonna talk about art, we're gonna talk about process, and we wanna make sure that we leave a little bit of time towards the end, because we don't have a whole lot, because you're here to see a show. And these men have some prep to do as well. But I want to make sure that there are, there's some space for any questions or comments based on our conversation for you folks. So get those wheels turning. But I want to start with you, Peter. This is a show that has been in creation for over 40 years at this particular point, right? And you'll talk a little bit about that. But you haven't been with the story since the beginning.
I'm far too young for that. Yes.
Can you share how you became involved?
Sure.
I know it was about 4 years ago, but tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so I met Walter in the mid-90s. I saw him in a play called Willa Falls, which is a piece by George Eliot Clarke, and it's about a young black couple from rural Nova Scotia who have a dream to go to Africville and Halifax and make the journey to get there, only to find it not to be what they had dreamed it. And Walter and Jackie Richardson, and many people were in this show. And we kind of fell in love when we met. And it was really in a bar afterwards and chatting about work. And Walter is such a unique and extraordinary person. And then over the years, we stayed in touch. And then I reconnected with Walter at the Stratford Festival, of all places, where he was in the company there in the early 2000s. And I directed him in several things there, most memorably in a play he brought to Stratford, to Richard Minette, Derek Walcott's Odyssey, which has a kind of interesting relationship to Tightrope Time, in that Derek Walcott, who's writing in a sort of Trinidadian diaspora, took this classical story and had Odysseus following the journey of migrant folks all over the world, and sort of spoke to a lot of the Windrush generation in the UK. And Walter was incredible in that too. And we just became really good colleagues. And as Mike was saying, about 4 or 5 years ago, this is classic Walter, he calls me up and he goes, well, Peter, I want to meet with you for a coffee. And I have an idea I want to share with you. I'm like, sure. And he goes, so he tells me all about Tightrope, which is, to call it a one-person show is like, I don't know, calling Mount Everest a hill or something. Like it's something he's always had with him and always been working on over the last 40 years. And Walter wanted to have a sort of, if such a thing is possible, a final iteration of it. And he had this dream that he would do it in Halifax, which is a really important part of his story. And he was born in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, so it's not far from where he's from. In Toronto, which is a really important community to him and where he currently lives. And in Ottawa. And the National Arts Centre has played a big thing. And the piece, this new iteration, was commissioned by Quincy Armorer, who was running Black Theatre Workshop in Montreal. And Quincy got the resources together for Walter to put it together. But outside of that, in that coffee, I said, so do you have like producers and stuff? No. Do you have dates lined up? No, darling, no. The play will choose what it needs to be. And I have chosen you to direct it. And you got no, like, oh, okay, you know, like, how do you say no to Walter Port? Like, it was a really honored thing to be invited. And, you know, I look at myself and my own lived experience in contrast to Walter's, and they're so far. And he goes, I trust you. You can tell my story. I want you to help me tell it. So I could not say no. And from there, we just followed. I think we began with, I don't know, something like 300 pages of material or something like that. And we just met, and he read me the whole thing. And from there, we just started paring away, sort of carving, you know, and Walter talks about that, you know, how sculptors will say, like, the sculpture is inside the wood already, and it's removing the extraneous to reveal the, he said the material is just like that. And there was so much to do. So we just patiently and rigorously worked through it, and arrived at something pretty close to what you're going to see this afternoon. And the thing I love about it, among so many things, is the idea of an epistle as to a memoir. A memoir is something that looks back. It presumes we now know everything, and I'm going to look back with my infinite wisdom on everything I learned in my life. An epistle is a letter going out. So that Walter is just as interested in the future. And you know, it is an amazing thing working with an artist who's 81 years old. And how he sees the world and how he sees his place in it, because it's not all built upon ambition and if I can make it and hopefully somewhere out there will see me and recognize me and I have something. It's not that at all. When I say to Walter, I don't really understand this part, he goes, well, child, yes. Like, he's not like, what do you mean and how do I make it better? And what? He's an elder, and I mean that genuinely. I don't want to toss that term or that title about without truly honoring it. He is an elder. And so it's always navigating his wisdom and his capacity. Like, Walter volunteered to do this talk back because it's his nature to go, yes, I want to meet people, I want to talk, yes. And then about 3 days ago, I went, Walter, you know that talk back is like an hour before your show? He's like, it is? Oh, I don't know if I can. I'm like, that is Walter in a nutshell. And it's because his will and his capacities are always so carefully negotiated. So often in theater, you push on through. You just, and Walter teaches us a bit more about the sacredness of our energies and the fragility of them, and to not think of fragility as something to be ashamed about or hide, but to embrace. He talks about like people when they say, "Oh, you're so young." He goes, I don't try to be young. I want to be old. I'm old. I want to go in for the big landing. Which, I find so challenging to my own ego. That goes, I'm 61, I'm immortal, man, or whatever, So it's like, it's such a special piece because Walter's vision, his letter to the world, is a challenging one. And it's not easy one. And he's really asking us to lean into our curiosity, to lean into knowing when something is wrong. It's the most repeated phrase in the play. You'll hear it today. I knew there was something wrong. And as much as we try to be comforted or, eased by an idea of hope, part of our life is when we go, something's not right. Something's wrong. That's what moves us into our tightrope time. And so, I feel like, I don't know, this very, very grateful guide who is like helping Walter navigate us into the woods. But it's his compass that I'm following, that I'm trying to navigate. And, I've learned a lot working with him.
I don't know if you folks remember, this was originally going to premiere in Ottawa, yes?
Yeah.
It was last year. Yeah,
20,
in February of last year, I want to say.
22, yeah.
Yeah, and it was essentially thwarted by the convoy, the truck convoy. You might have heard this, You heard a little something about that? Just before that time, you're saying that story in terms of that introduction, essentially Walter going, I choose you.
Yeah.
And literally I was appointed in March 2021. April 2020, I hadn't even moved. I didn't know where I was going to live at that particular time. And he said a very similar story about the time, the timing, the place, the location in which this story is told, and this invaluable notion of trust.
Yeah.
And that this is the time, 40 years, from the first idea to this particular moment. So I feel quite grateful as well that Tarragon can be a part of that trust. I love that. Andy, I'm going to speak a little bit because you designed costume, set, lighting, and video projection. Yeah. Just a little bit. That is a fascinating. I call it like the dance. Like, how do you support that sort of notion of legacy within this piece, that within a narrative that is not entirely linear, but has no beginning and has no end. How do you create that space that also feels really immersive? It's really an exceptional design for a solo show, like one of the strongest I've seen. Anyway, you're awesome.
Thank you.
What was that dialogue between yourself, Peter, or Walter, in creating this space?
You know, I'm really grateful to Peter for bringing up that sculpture metaphor, and that actually is where I started as an artist, as a sculptor in Windsor, and really just kind of like working with scrap metal and trying to make things in basements and so on. So it really means a lot to hear that, because that is really what this process felt like, starting first of all with that trust that feels so big when somebody like, sorry, I just smashed the microphone. I love it when that happens.
No worries.
It feels.
He didn't do the sound design.
No, I did it. Now we know why. Yeah. But for somebody like Walter and Peter, of course, to put this in front of me, anyone, and say, here, where are we going to go with this? And to be challenged with that was maybe that felt like one of the biggest offers of my career life. And you'll see why when you, of course, if you don't already know Walter, if you haven't been in a room with him, you'll understand why pretty soon. But it did feel like that. It did feel like just things just fell away, and there it revealed it. To this day, I still look at it and go like, I don't know how that happened. But it did. It was a channeling. Really, it does feel like Walter's doing. He's appointing us as just, you're the vessel that this is going to pass through. And I couldn't feel more honored than I do to have been chosen as that vessel. But, so of course there are, you go to certain references, you recognize that you're in this kind of eternal cyclical narrative piece of poetry, like at the highest level of human creation, witnessing this person who has carried this work with them forever, for their whole cycle, and as we have our cycles to kind of reconcile what our reason for being here is. It's like, wow, I'm engaged with someone in their reason. This is huge. So it was more of an honor than a job, that's for sure, still is. I still now look at things that we created and could not trace the path backwards from here, but recognize that it was a sincere one. And so imagery came from, Peter is like an extremely multidisciplinary human, let alone artist. And so I never hesitate to say, is this a thing? This is coming to me, I don't know why. So there were references from the story, from Walter, from cultural history, from current history, from the future, etc. And we just sort of landed together and felt right. So we worked from that base and moved forward. And then it did really feel like a sculptural process, kind of hammering, weaving, connecting, joining, all of those things. All Walter, and he just moves through it at the pace. Peter, you can't even repeat what Walter says without just slowing right the hell down and meaning it, because that's how he moves through life. And so you're compelled to join him at that pace and with that level of inspiration and truth. It really feels like speaking to truth in this work. Nothing else. Yeah.
It's quite profound, right?
It
also
is.
this because there is another factor to this. It is the sonic world, and both Walter and yourselves have mentioned in many times while you've been in the theater, this notion of the arias, the characters, essentially being miniature, or not miniature, but unique arias of the central character, or the question of who is Black Man talking, and how does sound play into that, both in terms of the text, but also the sonic world? How was it working with Adrienne, who is an opera singer herself, right?
Yeah, Adrienne Danrich O'Neill was a singer that I had worked with at the COC in Hadrian. And I just connected with her hugely. And when Walter approached me and we were thinking about sound, I was telling Adrienne about Walter. And I went, they have to meet these two, because they're just so akin, they're such kindred spirits. And so they met and completely connected. And Adrienne, she's from St. Louis and comes from, her father was a jazz musician, and she really is steeped in a whole African-American tradition of music and sound and community. And Walter and her had this incredible connection that Walter maintains, like the life of the Americans, the Black community in the American South is so akin to Black Nova Scotia to him, way more than other Canadian Black communities, which is an interesting thing about the diaspora and all of that I'm always learning about. So Adrienne is an opera singer, and she couldn't come here because she's making her Met debut in Dead Man Talking right now. And so she created a kind of sonic world of both memory and accompaniment that does everything from original composition to source things to she herself sings in the sound design to a kind of really cool resampling of popular music of Walter's time. So you can really hear how she's messing up with songs like War, What Is It Good For, to, you know, Papa Was a Rolling Stone, to all kinds of things that are part of Walter's idiom. And the sound was so related to Walter, whose voice is just so musical too. The other day we were recording one of the voiceovers and Andy had the headset on, you know, and Walter's going right in his ears, just like, oh man, you guys should be on this. It's like, what did you say? It was like massaging your brain?
No, I said, yeah, the inside of my head is getting a massage right now. I was like, just keep
Walter has
talking.
this incredible, resonant, deep voice. So, you know, it was a really gorgeous kind of trio. And Wayne Hawthorne, who is from Ottawa, he did he took all of Adrienne's compositions and mixed them in, and Lion Smith here in Toronto. But we're kind of like interesting, I don't know, kin to Walter artistically. I'm thinking of me, you, and Adrienne. We sort of, as a little trio, speak to a lot of who Walter is and where Walter comes from, who's of Black, Mi'kmaq, white heritage. So he's like a rich mix, you know. As he talks about his spirit is Euro-clad, but nourished in the sands of the Nile. That's so. It is, and he just loves bagpipes and Mi'kmaq drumming together. Like that's, I'll go, I don't know, it should be a cello, a Mi'kmaq drum, and a bagpipe. And Adrienne would just go, cool, okay, let's do it. And that's part of like, I don't know, that is also really special about Walter, that perspective.
How is that in terms of your own directorial practice and process through the years? You know, you there's a consistency of like astute and brilliant vision, but also, you know, a room where folks talk to each other, you know, there's a comfort in the room, in the space that you create. But there's also a very formidable guiding that you do. In this particular case, we're in response to, as well, as you just said, this sort of trifecta. How does that inform how you are going to work now? Or is this new? Is this idyllic? Is it, you know, what, yeah, I'm just really curious about
like
that.
what I would say succinctly to that, it is a really good and important question, is I realize how many decisions I make directorially are often motivated by fear, not bravery. Because I'm so afraid, oh, that could be awful. So, oh, don't do that, that could be like too personal or too emotional or too heady or too, no one will understand that. And with Walter, you've got to just sit back, think twice, because he doesn't arrive at something facetiously, yet he's inside it and relies on me to be outside of it. So like what I say to him is, I don't have to go, you need to work deeper on what the meaning of this line is. He knows, I go, this is what I receive when you say that. Is that what you want an audience to receive? I don't follow you when you say that. And he goes, he sometimes looks at me like I'm the densest block of wood in the room. And I'll go, I'm sorry, I don't follow you. Well, Peter, what I am speaking, he goes. And I go, I get it now. You got to do that when you're saying it.
Yeah, right.
Oh, right. So you have to navigate. So it makes me think when I work with younger artists, don't be afraid. Listen. Let it be bad for a while. Let it be messy. Let it be, because they might be expressing it in a way you just haven't thought of it. Like, don't be afraid. Bring your knowledge, your experience towards something powerful rather than something conservative. So Walter has taught me a lot about that.
We're asking our audiences to do the same thing, ostensibly, to lean in. To lean in, to listen. Does that ring true in terms of your art, or what is it that you're bringing forward in terms of that audience experiencing that work? What's that expectation on the audience?
I think there's a lot of trust, like both of, at least I'll speak for myself as a responsive artist, as somebody who has been invited to tell a story, and to the audience as well, to be able to jump onto that cycle in the same way that I did, in the same way that anyone would. So yeah, all that trust that we have to share in that space, that Walter ultimately is the one who's trusting all of us with his own truth. In I don't want to say in verse, but almost like this chronicle that he has created and delivered as a letter to us, that we have to go like, okay, like, I hope, am I holding this up? Am I holding you up, Walter? Are you safe? Am I safe? Or is the audience, like, what? And then also going like this is just coming out of him, so we have to just be with him and get under and behind and inside that as best we can. So it really is about trusting ourselves as artists to respond, Walter as the carrier of this epic piece of work, the one who's making the offering, and of course to the audience to receive it with open hearts, because he's not watering anything down for us, at all, not one bit. In answer to the idea of like, how does it change your way? For me, it just feels like there's this whole, we're on a new level. Like we got to that Everest. Like so everything that used to be, it's just gone. Like there's a new bottom line, which is Walter Borden. Like anything less true than this experience, don't bother. No point. That's how it feels.
That's really great. Just piquing your interest. There's like anticipation. Are there any questions or comments, reflections on what it is that you're hearing? Yeah, Mike.
I was so fascinated because I saw a preview last week. 40 years in the making.
Honestly.
So I'm so curious, what, in all of your opinion, just working with Walter, what has changed the most since the beginning, since 40 years ago, and what has changed the least?
I can only imagine. Like, I'm really curious when Rick Knowles comes, and I don't know if you know about Rick, but Rick is a really important member of our community and is an educator and taught at, I think, at Guelph University for a really long time. And is that right? Yeah. And so I was just talking to him about another thing, and he said, "Oh yeah, Tightrope time. I saw it 40 years ago." I'm like, "You did?" Of course he did. So he would be able to speak to that. I've never seen it before. I've never seen the other iterations, and there's no video of them. There's there's Walter's retelling, and there's some photographs. There's some really wild photographs of like the Arts Club production in Vancouver from 1980, which are just wild to see. I have noticed a real shift in it from the first go at the NAC to Neptune last year. We did it in Halifax at the Neptune a year ago exactly, to this year. Things that it's funny, things that were super clear a year ago are denser here. Things that were really dense there are just super clear, like they're obvious or something. Like, it's such a interesting thing, the way that evolves. But Walter's just so present as a person. Like, he's very where he is. And I think I hope I'm not romanticizing this, but I think there's a kind of grace that comes in your 80s that I witness, which is, I go, "Are you nervous?" He goes, "Oh, no, child, don't be silly." He goes, I've lived my whole life to do this show, so I just where it is. I'm excited to do it. Like he doesn't care. And I sort of get that a little bit, but boy, it's hard to, really, I'm terrified. Because what do we mean when we want people to like it? We want them to receive it, but I don't want everyone to think the same thing. It's only in creepy societies where everyone must think the same thing. And theater is very wildly democratic because it allows one person to love it and one person to go, not for me. And it's what it is. I mean, that's what theater is.
Yeah. There was I believe there was also some sort of iteration in the early 2000s at Black Theatre Workshop.
Okay. Oh, was
And
someone else?
It wasn't Walter. It was
Chinwenwe.
I think it was Chim. Yeah, it was Chim.
Yes.
Chinwenwe Miller, and there was a
And Audrey-
trumpet player.
Audrey directed it.
Yeah.
Audrey Mantel.
Yeah, there was a trumpet player that accompanied
Oh,
him,
wow.
Jason Selman. But there was a host of characters, like even more characters. Like there has been a distilling there, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many characters have been cut in the past few years, but we've landed on 10,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's where it is right now.
Yeah.
Somebody carved bobbleheads of all the characters apparently. In,
Is that right?
yeah.
Yes.
He has one. He has the pastor, but
No way.
apparently we'll find
They
out how
made
many.
these
Oh,
dogs.
that's good. That's very, very good. That's very great.
It's a very interesting structure. And it's not a spoiler alert. Doesn't give anything away, but it's more about form. Like Walter begins the show, and it's very almost like sort of stand-up. Like it's commentary about the world, about his experience in it. It's very straightforward. And then it morphs from that into memory. And you think it's a play about memory. And then it morphs into who we are imaginatively inside that helps us deal with the world and its struggles. And then he becomes other people who he meets in that world. And then it returns back. And so it has this kind of telescoping structure, and it's strange on people because you learn the vocabulary of the show and you go, okay, it's going to be, smart talk about the world and race and culture. Okay, it's going to be a memory thing.
Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be how we equip ourselves, where we're going to go a bit more surreal. Oh, he's somebody else right now. And so to watch an audience wrestle with that, it is like Walter, the character you meet, that is Walter. All those people, all those 10 people,
Yeah.
that's Walter.
The essence of who he is, right? Or the intersections of who he is.
Yeah.
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 There's those 5 sort of signposts are guided. This play is simultaneously published. It was just announced a couple weeks ago, so it's also available. But the sort of signposts are guided through what Walter calls movements.
Yeah.
Right? Movement 1 through movement 5. And I'm very curious, after you experience this, go by the play and to make that literary versus experiential difference. Because some of what you're saying is absolutely, it's entirely experienced and visceral. But then there is that other element to the dramaturgy of what Walter's creating. And in the spirit of what we do here at the Tarragon, I'm really, really curious about your thoughts about that. So hit me up afterwards, right?
Yeah.
What it's read versus how it's felt.
And the book is it's a 3-part publication.
Yeah.
That the play is being published now. And then there's the full poem that is Tightrope Time, which is like Walter's Ulysses or something. Mm-hmm. And then his memoir that he has been doing with Andrew Moody.
Yeah.
That is going to be, so it'll be 3 books of the play, the poem, and then sort of prose extended interview. And Walter's
Not slowing down. It's like, and I got this, and I got this,
Yeah.
and I got this.
Yeah.
It's very humbling,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
I want to give a sort of final thought of, and you've both sort of alluded to this, but as we're welcoming our audience, we're still in preview, we're in process, we're in this chapter. It's that famous question, what is it that you hope an audience can leave this theater with? What is one thought or one hope that you hope is taken with them on their journey after the last epistle?
You go first.
Okay. Trust Walter, even when you don't understand. That's what I noted, like in watching the audiences through the previews. I see when people just lean in and sit back at the same time, because he'll take you there. He means what he says. And I see people struggle when they go, I don't know what's happening. I don't. They get trust him, because I think what he's telling us is that we are all given a calling in life to be what fools name us, or to be what we're divinely here to do. That's part of life. And so when we struggle, it's just a little bit of madness on a much larger journey. It's like very philosophical, the play. Like, I wish I could say, you know, it's about anti-racism, or it's about bullying, or it's about, I wish I could give you a little convenient, tidy thing. And it's a lot more about imagine, like when he's doing he does a whole thing about what your life is and how you tell your life. And when he's in his 40s and what your 40s are about, you go, he's only halfway through. And there's so little in our culture that talks about aging with dignity, with wisdom, with power. So little, actually.
Yeah. Gonna hold on to that. Thanks, Peter.
It's hard to top that. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
right.
it really is about know yourself, trust your world, trust time, trust energy, trust, just trust. So that I really don't feel anything greater. I don't think there could be anything greater than that in a creative space, in a personal space, in a lifetime, in a cycle, in a speaking of truth. It's just what Walter is. I mean, remember when we got shut down at the NAC, which was horrible. I mean, the hotel we were in was inundated with protesters, and Walter he just kept moving through that. Like everybody's like, oh my God, Walter. And Walter just he just glides through stuff, and when we got shut down and we're like, this is horrible, like how could, and he's just like, the show will happen when it's meant to happen. And he means it. It's not like, oh, we'll deal. He respects and understands and trusts that something's just going, no, just a little this, okay, a little that way, now go. And he was right. He always is. He always is.
Entirely.
Yeah.
Yes.
It sounds like you were one big happy family, the three of you, but Walter sounds like he was at the helm. So were there times when you thought, oh my God, if I have to do what he says again, I'm going to kill myself? Were there times when you guys said, you really want to do what he wants? Because it sounds like he directed you.
It's true. I mean, it's true what you're saying. He says, Walter needs to be 100% on stage. And he says that Andy and Adrienne and our stage man are incredible. Like, the ASM on this show, Alison Crosby, who's from Nova Scotia, like, is such a key person to the show. She manages Walter backstage. She helps him with his changes. She knows the entire play off book.
She's off
So
book.
Walter at any time can go live, and she's right there. He's never done that yet at Tarragon. He is directing us. He is. But he relies hugely on our skill. So I never feel like there's no power move going on, or, hey, Walter, my staging needs to be. Like, it's none of that. He's saying, I bring your full game to what I'm trying to do. And so, we are a happy family. We are. Like, it really, like, when I'm with Andy and the stage management and Adrienne, I just feel I'm in real peerage. I don't have to manhandle anything. I go, what do you think of this? Is this working for you?
Yeah.
I think it should be faster, don't you? Or, yeah, that's right, it should be faster. Or, no, trust me, stay with it, it's slow. Like that, we just, which is rare, and it's very valuable.
That's great. Yeah. Martha.
Hey, Mike.
Hi.
Thank you for bringing this delicious conversation. And I was thinking about massaging the brain, and I totally feel like my curiosity has been massaged by this.
Mm.
And I won't see it this afternoon, but definitely. So, yeah, this is, I know nothing about it,
Okay.
and it's really fun to get this
Yeah.
sort of backdoor perspective for a while, and can't be
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And interestingly, in my biography, my parents were born and raised in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, which is
Get out.
the place, someone will know the name of the woman who refused to sit downstairs in the theatre. She's now
From Desmond.
Yeah.
Desmond.
So I have a sense that
Yeah.
personal biography somehow might be reflected in this story in some way. But anyway, there's, yeah, thank you.
Love that. Thanks, Martha. Any other thoughts, questions before they do some prep, so or whatever it is that you're doing in between the show? I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank you too. Thank you so much for. I feel like this conversation. I could have just like sunk into this combo for a long, long time. We probably will, and I want to just offer. You know, this notion of song, again, I come back to song as finding our song. Like, this is something that's quite, not really giving anything away, but my hope is after you experience this and move through this and move through Walter and the wonderful offerings from our artists, that your attuneness to what's around you and what's within you in the notion of a song sort of invigorates and inspires you. Because the world is hard. Like, it's, you know, there's some stuff happening. But this notion of humanity and resilience is the thing that allows us to move forward. And so finding that, embracing that, I really do encourage you to be excited about what it means to step out into the world after you experience this play. So thank you very, very much for being with us. Enjoy it later. And stay tuned for the rest of the season. After the last Tightrope, we have 7 premieres altogether. So thank you for being with us this season. Enjoy.
Thank you.